dive into this process and the cost a little bit more. Let's go back to the executor.
Yes.
Because I know a huge important job. What characteristics, what are the traits of a good executor?
Yeah. Well, I would say an executor has got to be someone that you absolutely trust with the administration of your estate. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is good with money, but it needs to be someone who can get the job done. The executor, remember, their sole job is to make sure that the assets go where they need to go. Now, that would be a different question if you were to ask me who should be a trustee.
Okay.
That person might need to be actually very good with money because they're investing assets. They're making sure that there are enough assets to be doled out when your kids turn certain ages in the future, etc. Your executor, I kind of equate it to like the cleanup crew. Right? So when you pass away, who's cleaning up your house? Who's turning off the lights? Who's going to turn off the cell phone bills?
Right.
Things like that. So maybe your executor needs to be someone that lives in the same city as you do.
Okay.
Geographically, how difficult is it going to be for that person if they don't live anywhere near you?
For them to be in charge.
Exactly.
Right.
That person also needs to be savvy enough to deal with the court system, because the will is probated. So they're going to need to actually probate the will, or they're going to need to be able to hire someone to help them through that process. So they need to be legally savvy enough. And it's not the most difficult thing. Some states it is. Florida, New York, California. It is very difficult in those states.
Right.
But in other states, it's a pretty easy process and can be done in some instances without an attorney. I would also suggest that your executor be someone, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that is close to your family, but again, knows where things are.
Right.
You know, and knows who the beneficiaries are and can contact them, etc. So there are many companies that will serve as executors. They do it for a fee, but often I like to tell clients, I like to have someone in the family serve either as a co-executor with a company or be an executor, because they know where the bones are buried, quite honestly.
Right. And I think you're bringing up an important point that people need to understand. You can have more than one person.
Absolutely.
So you can have co-executors. So if two people can work together to get the job done.
Right.
One thing I think is important about an executor is being able to handle conflict well.
Yes.
Because if someone's not happy about some of the decisions, they need to be confident in carrying out your wishes. You want to be cremated. You don't want to be buried. Whatever is going to happen in that will, they need to follow it to the letter.
Absolutely.
And be okay with some folks not being happy.
Absolutely. And they need to be able to work under a situation of grief.
Right.
So
that's true.
You know, you pass away, things need to get done. And they need to be able to step into action to do it.
Yeah, very important job. Can you imagine the wrong person getting this job?
Ooh,
That's
goodness.
so scary.
Yeah.
All right, guardian.
Sure.
How do you know it's the right person to pick?
Yes, guardian is another hot button topic to talk about. First thing that I would say is someone who knows your children, someone who knows your values, your philosophies, how you want to raise your children, and that they're fine with how you want to raise your children. And they will also pick up that torch and raise your children the way that you would have wanted them to be raised. Geography, again, is another big one. You don't necessarily, if your kid is in middle school, you don't want to rip them out of their school and have them move to another state to go live with someone else. So is there someone who is local so that your child could stay in the same school district, can have the same friends, etc.? Also, often clients will come to me and they will name couples as guardians. That's perfectly fine, but I want you to keep in mind there what happens in the case of one of those members of the couple either getting hurt, a divorce happening. What happens then? Who is the primary person of the couple in that situation? Age. A lot of times I'll get people that want to name their parents. Age is going to be a big issue. Their health. You know, are they going to be around in the long haul if you need to actually call on them to be a guardian? I would also say financial stability. Remember I said that a guardian is just the guardian of the person. But you want to make sure that that person is living in such a way that it's not going to negatively affect the rearing of your child.
Right.
Obviously, you can provide for funds for your child, but you want to make sure that that person that's raising your child is financially stable enough for their own life. The other thing I would say is, does the guardian have other children? How is that going to factor into their livelihood and their everyday life if you're inserting another child into a family situation that's already happening? So thinking about that as well. And then above all, what I tell clients all the time is that these documents can be changed. So don't feel like the person you pick today has to be the person it's going to be forever. Right. So you pick the best person today. If that person's not right a year from now, you can change your documents and name someone new.
Okay. Thinking about my husband and I, David, when we had to update our documents and we looked back at who we had picked and we were like, were we making the right decision?
Surprise.
We were, but just to show you how much life has changed. You know, I'm being a little sarcastic, but who we picked when our children were a certain phase, they were not the right people when our children became teenagers.
Exactly.
So it's okay to revisit that.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about the cost of this.
Yeah.
You know, I think money has kept people from getting their wills done.
Absolutely.
I think people think it's going to cost them $10,000, $20,000 on average. So we're talking about a simple will, because obviously some are very complex. What's a normal range?
Like I said, there are many different systems online that can help you. I just Googled yesterday because I was curious myself. How much does it cost online to do a will? I think LegalZoom was starting at about $150 for a simple will. Okay. There are other companies, like I said, that would go up from there. I can tell you attorneys, just based off the Georgia and Florida markets, are going to start anywhere between $1,500 and can go anywhere up to $6,000 or $7,000. Again, depending on how complex the situation is. And the other thing I tell clients, as we said before, the more organized you are, the cheaper it will be.
You can help the fees.
Absolutely.
You can keep the fees in a more reasonable, if you
Absolutely.
And people have to understand, attorneys and accountants hate picking up documents, picking them up, putting it down, picking up, have your stuff together. Yeah. You know, come in, find out what the process is, get it closed out, and you can certainly save money.
Absolutely. The more organized you are, the more you can save.
Love that. Now, I've heard a couple people complain about having to pay a consultation fee. Mm-hmm. Is that standard when you are looking for a new attorney?
It depends. So, as you know, attorneys are service providers. So most attorneys are billing per hour. So some attorneys, if you go and you make an appointment and then you don't show up, you've then just wasted an hour of an attorney's time. So some attorneys will charge for a consultation fee. Some do not. Some just want to learn, you know, what is the situation? What is your family situation? Can I help you? Can I not help you? I will tell you my personal philosophy is I do not charge for a consultation fee unless I'm giving legal advice at the consultation. So more often than not, what we'll discuss is kind of just your situation, what are the assets you have, and then I will say, well, this would be a great thing for me to do as your attorney. I would likely charge XYZ. Our next meeting, let's talk about the plan. Let's talk about the advice that I would give you, and then that's when the bill starts, the clock starts ticking.
Okay. All right. I think it's time for us to transition back to Insecure.
Yes.
Our next segment that we want to share.
She's a hoot. Well, we did it. Dad, I know that was not easy, but I'm proud of you.
No, it wasn't. But thanks for pushing us.
Anytime.
Love you.
Me too. All right, you guys go get some rest, okay?
Okay, sweetie.
Good night, daughter.
So it just makes me feel that Molly, the main character here, clearly she's the one in charge in her family, what we would call the chief money officer. Mm-hmm. She had a tough job to do, but she got it done.
Yeah, yeah. thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know one thing that you and I talked about earlier is this is an emotional process.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. I was telling you earlier that I call them the 4 fears.
Right.
That, people really don't want to do this. It's really hard for them to discuss. It's hard for them to start. It's hard to bring your family members into the fold. It's hard to think about your assets. And really, it really boils down to 4 main things, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The first main fear is the fear of mortality.
Right.
People do not want to discuss dying.
Right.
At all. It's hard.
It's hard.
You saw it. You break down.
Yeah, right.
You break down, and especially if you've dealt with a death close in the family before, and you've seen what it does to family members, and you've seen how it could tear family members apart. Sometimes it brings them back together, but it's really hard to face your death.
Yeah.
It's really, but it's natural. It's natural to not want to talk about death. So I tell people a way to kind of combat that fear of mortality is, well, why don't we plan for your life? Right. Why don't we do some life planning?
Right.
Let's start baby steps.
Okay.
Let's start with things that matter while you're still living, like your healthcare power of attorney,
right,
or your financial power of attorney, or making sure that you have an entity or an LLC set up for your business. Things like that. Let's plan for your life while you're living. And as you take those baby steps, you start to, slowly get into, oh, okay.
Right.
Then I'm actually going to have to make sure that this entity that I set up goes to the right person.
Right.
In your operating agreement for your entity, what happens when you die? You start to really go into that estate planning arena. So estate planning is not all about death.
Right.
It's really not. There's so much more to estate planning than just dying in a will. So I try and tell people, let's take baby steps. Let's start with life planning.
So it's fear of mortality. What are the other 3 fears?
Second is perfectionism. You want it to be perfect. You want the absolute right person as the guardian.
Right.
You want the absolute right person as your executor. You want to make sure that you send the exact right amount of money to your niece or nephew
at the right time.
At the right time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's the fear of being perfect the first go round, mm-hmm. and you don't have to be. These documents, your will and your trust, can be amended. Mm. They can be changed at any time. Like Janai said, she just went back and she was like, what was I thinking?
Right.
When I named these people? And that's okay.
Right.
Because we can change it. So it's, again, that fear of perfection. The third is, and I suffer from this, it's the fear of organization. Just writing it all down. I don't want to sit down and think about everything that I own. Or like we saw in the first clip, I don't want to think about the fact that I didn't have enough assets to pass on to my family, or I didn't make enough money. Right. I don't want to think about those things. I don't want to write that number down because
right.
it's showing me
right.
what my life is valued.
Yeah, you've
and
attached an emotion to that asset and
right.
the value of
right.
that balance sheet list.
Exactly. Is this the value of my life?
Of your life, right.
I don't want to think about
deep.
that. Yeah. And I don't want to write it down. I don't want to see it.
Right.
I don't want to see it on paper. And again, that one too is baby steps mm-hmm. there. And maybe meeting with an attorney or meeting with loved ones who can just help you kind of put those things together. So maybe you're not writing it, but you're just telling someone on the phone,
right?
This is what I have. Do you mind writing it down for me? This is what I think it's valued, things like that. And then what we were just talking about is the fear of cost. Okay. It's going to be too expensive, mm-hmm. or it's going to take too much of my time, not just a cost financially, but a cost of my resources and my time and my thought.
Right.
So there's that fear as well. But as we discussed, it could be very cheap for you. And right. the more you're organized, the more you take those little baby steps. One of my favorite sayings is baby steps are big steps for a baby.
Right.
take little step by step.
Right.
And then you can really get it done. So those are the biggest fears that people surround with estate planning.
I'm so glad that you shared that.
Yeah.
Particularly looking at what you think is your life.
Yeah.
Because it's not your life.
It's not.
It's just some things
you can't
that
take it with you.
Yeah, that you've acquired along the way.
Exactly.
Right.